Good evening, everybody. This is Jonathan Trapp. Welcome to the December 21st, 2023 meeting of EDIT. I'll call the meeting to order at 7:31, we'll call it. And I'll invite everybody to please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Following the pledge, our first agenda item tonight is to welcome our two new members, and a hearty welcome it is. So welcome both to Rodney Gray, who has been with us before as a member of the public and came to speak with us at one of our meetings relatively recently, and to Jennifer Pacelli. Jennifer is a school teacher, formerly teaching in the town of Trumbull, but of relevance to disclose to this group. She's a co-grandparent to my granddaughter. She's my daughter's mother-in-law. And so I wanted to make sure that was publicly disclosed. So welcome to both of you. And nice to have you both on board. Having now welcomed you, we can turn to roll call. And I know that Joanne can see everybody, but I'll just recite that Chris Powell is not here. He's emailed me earlier to say he has a conflict and won't be able to join. And Tara Figueroa is not yet here, but I anticipate that she will be joining us, and I hope that she'll be on with us soon. Otherwise, everybody is present and accounted for, Joanne. Correspondence. We've had no correspondence since our last meeting, whether you regard that meeting as our November 2nd special meeting or the October meeting, other than one email asking somebody was asking why they couldn't get on to our November meeting, our regularly scheduled November meeting, which of course, as most of you know, didn't happen because of a snafu with the public notice. So I corresponded with that correspondent and let her know that the meeting hadn't happened, and she wrote back and thanked me. So since our November meeting was canceled, our regular November meeting was canceled, and at our November 2nd special meeting, we did not have an item on the agenda to approve our minutes. We have two sets of minutes to approve. The minutes from our October 19th meeting, and then the minutes from our November 2nd meeting. Those minutes have both been circulated. All of the people who were then members of the committee attended. So all of those people can vote to approve these minutes. And at this moment, I think that's just Rick, David, and me. I'm Shala, I'm sorry. And so I'll call for a motion to approve the minutes of October 19th. We'll take them one at a time.
I move to approve the minutes of October 19th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? All right, so I understand that Jen and Rodney will abstain. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the four of us who were at the meeting and can vote have voted to approve. I'll call for a motion to approve the minutes of November 2nd.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second? Okay. Any discussion? All right. Again, all in favor from among those who can vote?
Aye.
Aye.
And same result, Joanne. 4 in favor, none opposed, 2 abstain. Moving on to the old business. The first item on our agenda under old business is the town value statement. And I wanted to report on the status of that. So the town council has been in receipt of the town value statement that we proposed for its consideration for some number of months. I think frankly lost sight of it. I sent it to them again, sort of in the hurly-burly leading up to the election. And I think that with the press of business leading up to and in the wake of the election, the town council has not been able to attend to that. And so that leaves for us the question of what is the best path forward. Obvious alternatives include letting it go, continuing to push the town council to consider it, or instead sending the value statement directly to the first selectman and seeing if she can advance it through her offices. My inclination is to choose path number 3. I recognize that for two of us, at least, what I'm talking about may be a little bit foreign. So let me see if I can find the value statement and put it up on the screen. In theory, I should be able to do that. In practice, who knows? Oh, there we go. Let me see if I can share now. So are folks able to see the value statement?
Yep.
Okay. So what we've got here is in fact an explanation for why our committee recommended a value statement and some history with respect to what other towns have done, and then a proposed value statement for the town of Trumbull, which we submitted to the town council back in May. And so the proposed statement reads, the town of Trumbull is a vibrant community with a rich history and bright future. We recognize and value diversity as a vital characteristic of our town. Trumbull is committed to ensuring all residents, students, employees, vendors, and visitors are treated with dignity and respect by fostering a safe and welcoming atmosphere here. Atmosphere. We believe the sum of each individual's life experience, identity, and background strengthens our community. Our town has a duty to provide all citizens with fair and equal access to facilities, programs, resources, and services, as well as treat everyone in a courteous and professional manner. To achieve a sustainable and equitable future for all, we must consider how town policies, practices, and decisions may impact the environment, people, and our economy. And so that was approved by our committee prior to May 1st, and it was submitted to the town council on May 1st. And the question now is how to move forward. And I'll open that up for discussion.
I agree with you, Jonathan. I would go to Vicky.
Yeah, I think that's the path. I think that's the first path. And if that doesn't work, then we can have a different discussion next month.
Yeah.
Okay. Others with different thoughts? Any concerns? I recognize that for two of you, this is all sort of new, which is fine. I'm not necessarily trying to put anybody on the spot. I just want to make sure that everybody feels an opportunity. Unless there's further discussion, and we can continue actually to have the discussion after the motion, I would ask if anybody wants to make a motion that authorizes, I guess, me to send the value statement to the first selectman by letter or by email.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Second. Any further discussion? David?
No.
No, just flipping the microphone down. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I was going to offer that if you want to spread the task around, I'm happy to do it. If you're looking for someone else to, but it probably is appropriate to come from a chair.
Yeah.
I appreciate the offer. I think it's probably a light lift, so I'm happy to do it, but I appreciate that. All right. So absent further discussion, I'll call for a vote on the motion. And
Just one
now,
other, sorry, John, one other thought. I do think that it is important that we continue to push for the adoption of this statement in whatever way makes sense. And so if going to Vicky is the next best step, I certainly agree and am behind that. I would also just note that there was a survey that went out to the town asking for some input around some of the things, planning for the future, infrastructure, lots of different things. And there were aspects of that survey that centered equity and inclusion. And so being that it is something that continues to be important for the town, I think it's important that we move in whatever ways we can, this statement to be adopted.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I think that sending this to the first selectman is an appropriate next step to try to accomplish that. Jen and Rodney, the first vote you get to participate in. I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Okay, that one's unanimous, Joanne. Thank you all. Now I've got to go find my agenda again. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Trumbull Library program or programs that we've been conducting. And I wanted to update us on that and then talk a little bit about next steps. First, I should say, I don't recall now, no, I don't think we've reported it to this committee, that prompt that we had hoped that the library would put up has now been put up. And so I don't know what the exact status of it is at this minute, but I know that the prompt has been put up. The prompt asks people in the library something like, what does inclusion mean to you? And there have been a number of answers that have been provided. I don't know if the poster has yet been filled with answers, but there are some answers. And so at some point we can look forward to seeing what that has brought to us. In addition, we had our book club meeting back in early November and have not yet had a report on that. And it was, from my perspective, I thought it was well attended. There were about a dozen of us there, I think, something like that. People I hadn't met before from different walks of the community. And we had a very good discussion of the sum of us. I thought that the library did a very nice job facilitating it and organizing it, hosting it. And Shala and David and I were all there. And so I'll invite first Shala to offer any additional thoughts on that, and then David, and then I'll move on after that.
I don't know if I have anything new. I agree with everything that you shared. John, I particularly appreciated that there were just some folks that I didn't know at all, who just were able to make really meaningful contributions to the conversation. And so I left feeling excited about that partnership and continuing to host our book clubs as we move through quarterly.
Okay. David, anything that you want to add or share?
I would just add, as someone who's still reading the book, of which I am enjoying it, but I did not get as far as I had hoped. I too was invigorated. I was like, we should be doing this on a quarterly or 3 times a year basis or something to kind of keep the momentum going. I think as a first effort, I thought it was good.
Yeah. So I don't want to put anybody on the spot, and at the moment, the only one who could be put on the spot is Rick, because Jen and Rodney weren't part of the committee at the time. I wanted to get your views, Rick, and Tara's and Chris's, as folks who didn't come, whether you think that this is a good exercise and one that we should continue to participate in. I recognize that people may have conflicts or whatever. I'm not finding any fault that you weren't at the meeting, but I did want to get your perspective on it and make sure that the committee is in favor of doing similar events.
Yeah, I very much would like to continue it. I'm very disappointed that a situation presented itself that I just couldn't get out of. I really wanted to participate. I think I've mentioned to this group before that I know the author, reasonably well. She held her wedding reception at my summer house in South Dartmouth. So I've spoken to her at length multiple times, and think the world of her. So I really was quite disappointed that I wasn't able to participate. But yes,
Okay.
I would very much like to see us do this quarterly. I don't I don't know if we could do it more frequently than that, but I would be in favor of more frequently versus less frequent.
Okay, so I don't want to bite off more than we can chew. Um, but the library has already put on its calendar a next event. And so I wanted to talk with this group, now all of us, about whether we wanted to, in fact, pursue it. It sounds like, um, you know, Rick and David and Shala are enthusiastic, and I saw that Jen was nodding her head, and I happen to know that Jen is in favor of books. But they have proposed Monday, March 11th, 2024 at 6 p.m. So it's more than it's less frequent than every quarter. We had originally thought that it might be maybe a little bit sooner than that, but this is what they've proposed. And they're asking us to confirm a book selection. Those of us who have been on the committee may recall that we had in fact picked a second book, although we're not bound by that choice. And I don't know if after the last experience, David is correct to say that the book we read was a good book, but not a fast read. The book we had chosen is How the Word is Passed, or How the Word was Passed. I think it's How the Word is Passed. And I actually took that book out on loan and have started to read it. And it is a faster read. I'm enjoying it. And I think that it provides a different perspective, it's a different kind of a book, even though it's a nonfiction book. And so I'm actually quite happy with that choice. But if we wanted to revisit it, we certainly can. I'll open it up again for discussion. If anybody has a view about either the timing of the event or the book that we've chosen or anything else, happy to hear it.
I'm just wondering, we have new members. I wonder whether some input to the reading list to confirm the decision makes sense, or whether we move forward with number 2 and then open it up for the next time around.
It's a fair question, and as I say, I think everything is game. So we picked a book, we can unpick a book. I would add as well that if folks remain enthusiastic after the March event, there'll be yet a third book to pick. So I'm happy to have any guidance.
Two things. Oh, sorry.
sorry.
Go ahead, Jen. Go ahead, Jen.
I was going to say, I was just looking up what the book was as you were talking, and it looks really interesting to me. I'm happy to go with that.
I love that book. So I'm happy to go with it as well. If we were considering a shift, which perhaps we'll just consider after the next one, I do think it is worth us considering whether we wanted to go with perhaps a memoir from the list, which again is like a little bit of a, I don't know, easier read potentially than the Sum of Us was. Though I do agree that How the Word is Passed is a bit of an easier and faster read. So it doesn't have to be now, but I'm a fan of memoirs, and there were several great ones on the list, and it doesn't have to be now, but I think we should definitely consider that for the next one if we stick with How the Word is Passed. And then the other doesn't mean we have to change it, but thing to note is that Monday the 11th is the first night of Ramadan, so I don't know if you want to work around that to be inclusive of all folks attending.
Yeah, so I hadn't realized that this was a date that the library suggested, and I didn't appreciate that. I think that they have undertaken what they call a soft launch in early December, which is to say that they've put this date out there in the world. I don't think that is the end of it. If they want to move it, like, we can move it. Does anybody happen to know? And I'm sorry to say, I just don't. Is the first night of Ramadan a more significant night than other nights?
I certainly don't know. And does it would it create any, restrictions? I don't,
I
I don't,
assume it involves fasting, but I
right.
think in a, although maybe not at night, I think in my ignorance, I would err on the side of respect. And so what I'm inclined to do is to go back to the library. I think March 11th is probably later than we had intended anyway,
Mhm.
and see if there's another date that they might be willing to select a week or two earlier, unless there's any objection.
Well, that's a good idea.
No, but I'm on the library website. I don't see where they're pulling that date out.
So it's a very soft launch.
They say that their winter 2024 program guide will have it, David. I
Oh,
don't know if that's online. That may just be in the lobby.
that's possible.
If they haven't launched it at all, then
Then
presumably
it's
it's
easy
even
to move
easier
it,
to move.
right?
But the last time round, I think we asked them to move something, and they said no problem. They'll just make new photocopies. So uh, uh, I want to err on the side of being respectful and inclusive. I mean, if this committee doesn't do that, then who will? And so um, I'll go back to the library and ask them if there's a date a week or two earlier. Does anybody want to revisit the choice of the book, or shall we leave it in place and even so, over the next few months, begin to consider what book number 3 might be?
Did you mention a list? Do you have a list of books that you're looking at?
Oh, it's a good
Just
question. Yeah,
curious.
the library provided a list of books that they could most easily make available. It's not intended to be exclusive if there's a reason to go off the list. And Tara Figueroa, who is on our committee but isn't here tonight, has in particular been an advocate for 1 or 2 books that aren't on the list. So I think that as a committee, we should not be limited by the list, but I will forward the list to Jennifer and Rodney so that they have it before our next meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jonathan, just a heads up, I'm doing a search on adult book club events and nothing's coming up. So it may not in fact be online yet. So,
Okay. That will make it easier.
mhm.
Okay. Unless anybody has further discussion on the library, I'll move us on to the next agenda item, which is the Trumbull Historical Society collaboration. Okay. So since our last meeting, the Native American Heritage Month celebration was held at the Trumbull Historical Society back in November. Rick was there, at least, I think, briefly. Shala and I were there. David, I can't remember if you made it. I don't think so.
No, personal obligations.
But and Tara was there. It was very well attended, and in particular, it was sort of an open house for something like 3 hours. And the first hour and a half or so, almost 2 hours maybe, was bustling, and then the last hour was rather quiet. And so, I take a lesson from that we probably don't need a 3-hour open house. But the event was very well done. The Pogasets and friends did a terrific job. They had cornhusk doll station. They had some Native American foods that were available for sampling. There was some jewelry that had been designed and created that was available not only on display but for sale. And they did a demonstration of some Native American dance, and the weather cooperated, so they did it outside. There were lots and lots of families there. And then on top of that, it was an open house, and so people explored the Trumbull Historical Society museum as well, some of which was related to Native American history and some of which was not. So I thought it was, I was there for the 3 hours and tried to help where I could. They didn't need very much help from me, but I thought it was terrific. And they seemed to be appreciative and enthusiastic and interested to try to do something again. And so I don't have anything specifically in mind to recommend to this group, but I would certainly want to encourage us to give thought to what else we might do in collaboration with the Trumbull Historical Society. Sort of jumping ahead a couple of items on our agenda, just previewing. We have budget season coming up to talk with, to see if we can get some collaborations with various town departments, because we don't have our own line item in the budget. And the Trumbull Historical Society has been footing the bill for the events we've been doing with them. They haven't been expensive, but you know, $6 is $6 more than we have. And so it's been a wonderful collaboration. We did the one back in June for Pride Month. We did the one in November for Native American Heritage Month. And we should have in mind this avenue for collaboration if there are other historical links that we want to collaborate on. I'll try to keep this item on the agenda so that we can refresh on it and continue to work with the Historical Society. But since it's on the agenda today, does anybody have thoughts looking ahead at whether it's monthly celebrations or something else that has a sort of a cultural or DEI relevance and an historical relevance that we might talk to the Historical Society about?
I'm curious, is there a desire to like do what we've done with the Historical Society on a kind of an annual event and use June and November specifically as shared event months, or do we want to spread that around a little bit? Because May is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, and we could try to hit all the over the course of a couple of years, hit all the months.
Yeah, it's a good question, David. I open it up for discussion. I have a couple of thoughts on that, but I don't want to monopolize.
I had a similar thought as we have sort of launched with Pride Month and Native American Heritage Month, that we could continue to lean into history and heritage months. So I mean, February is Black History Month. Asian Pacific Islander Month is May, as David noted, and so it makes sense to me that we might kind of like choose that space to capitalize on in our work with the Historical Society. And I think we also want to be thoughtful about being as inclusive as possible in making those choices, such that we are not leaving out a particular history or heritage if we are going to go that route.
Yeah. So, well, before I jump in, other thoughts? Okay. So it takes about 60 days or so to actually pull one of these things together, I find. You can't just do it on a dime. And so we certainly don't want to be doing them 12 times a year. I don't think we want to overburden the Trumbull Historical Society, for which this is a significant commitment of time and energy and space. My inclination, David, rather than to sort of, maybe it's consistent with what Shala said, land on Pride Month and say we're going to do that every year, is to move it around. And so whether we try to do something in February, which is the soonest I think we could possibly hope to do something again, or maybe this year we look further ahead to May and come back to February in 2025. I'm happy to have people's thoughts on, but it seems to me that trying to do something in the late second to early third quarter, late first to early second quarter, and then again in the early fall or something. I don't know what September's month is. Might be a good idea.
Hispanic Heritage.
I think February would be very difficult.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, as a practical matter, we couldn't get started with a meaningful discussion until the new year. And
Right.
so pulling something together by February would be not impossible, but aggressive.
Right. I would think second quarter might be better.
So, um, Asian American Heritage Month is May. David, what's April?
I don't think April has got a connection. At least according
April's
to the list
tax
I'm
month.
looking.
All right.
That's right. It's our IRS appreciation night or month. Yes.
All right. Um, I guess I'll ask if there's a strong view that we should try to do something in February. I'm happy to entertain that. If not, I'm happy to continue to consider over the next month or two, trying to pull something together
A-
for May.
Actually,
Or-
I'd like to rescind what I just said when I clicked further into it. April is Celebrate Diversity Month. It's also Autism Acceptance Month and National Arab American Heritage Month. So I suspect that if
Okay.
I dig deeper, I'll find a month there'll be a connection, multiple connections to every month, I think, in the year.
Yeah. So I don't think with the Trumbull Historical Society, something as general as Diversity Month is a meaningful nexus. Arab American Heritage Month could be, and I guess raises questions in light of world events whether that would be most welcomed um,
I think
or not.
going to May with Asian might be better.
This
Um,
Harvard calendar says May is also Jewish American Heritage Month. Is that? This calendar from Harvard has a bunch of different things on it.
Okay.
Just.
So in some respects, the same comment as for Arab American Heritage Month might be welcomed, might not.
Mm.
I guess I'm inclined to suggest that Asian American Heritage Month is a good one to celebrate in May. Do folks have a dissenting view? I'm happy to. It's not a dictatorship by any means, so I'm happy to try to get consensus.
I am fine with that as a next step, given the timing. But I do think it's important that as we continue to partner, that we are kind of spreading out where we land year over year, and can maybe be more forward thinking about that as we move ahead.
Agreed. Rodney, were you?
I was a bit intrigued with the Arab American Heritage Month. I went to, I go to Abby's sometimes, and some Middle Eastern food quite a bit. And they have Free Palestine, they have the flags that represent, basically the support of Middle Eastern perspective of what's going on, like you said, in worldly events. I think it's bold. I think it's something that's different, maybe a little challenging, a little uncomfortable for people. And that's what I think we should see. And then if you want to do was it the Jewish heritage in terms of in May, was it? I don't know if you could do
May
two.
was Jewish, yeah.
It could be the same thing. And do the celebration, and especially if you see a discussion where, or a, let's just say, an outcome where it could be healthy, where people are discussing the worldly events and how it affects your lives and how people get through it. And we're learning more in terms of today's time and not necessarily history that happened so long ago.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I appreciate the opportunity that it presents for us to espouse diversity by embracing people even in their most trying times. But at the same time, I'm concerned that to pick one of those 2 months and not the other is potentially problematic and would unintentionally send a message we don't intend. And since I think it's a mistake to try to do April and May, my personal inclination is to do neither this cycle,
Right.
and instead to focus on an area that won't have that unintended effect by selecting one. I don't know if others feel differently.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind trying to do something bold. My concern would be you've got to do this it's got to be balanced. And to try and the effort it would take to make sure that we are focusing on those two communities, but making sure that this is perceived as being completely neutral. Boy, that's just harder than we need it to be, I think.
And I think it takes planning time, which that's
Right.
also the challenge. So if we're gonna, I agree,
Yeah.
Rick. If we're gonna do it, we need to do it right.
Right. Boy, I'd love it. I'd love at some point in 2024 we do something that is bold and kind of, gets people in town talking about, this task force, this subject, etc. But boy, that is a awfully dangerous one where it's just 7 or 8 of us with no budget, and I wouldn't want to take that one on.
It may be, and I guess I pray that it will be the case that there will be a peace soon, and then we might instead look for some kind of an opportunity to celebrate people coming together.
Oh, I like that so much better. Yeah, trying to get it in the middle of this, so we don't know where this is going to go in the next few weeks, few days.
All right, so I think the sense I have of the committee is that we should explore a program with the Trumbull Historical Society in May to celebrate Asian American Heritage Month, with the possibility of perhaps doing I forget whether it was Latin American or Hispanic Heritage Month in September. And so let me broach that with the Trumbull Historical Society and report back to you all in January as to whether there is interest.
That sounds
And I'll make a note of that too. Okay, so I want to move us on. My promise is to get this meeting completed by 9. My hope is to be closer to 8:30, but let's see how we do. The next item on our agenda is the response to these NSC leaflets. And again, for Rodney and Jen, these are the neo-Nazi leaflets that were distributed in the town of Trumbull. I guess it was in late October, and we had a special meeting in November at which we approved and released a statement that we not only did we release, but then the town echoed by putting it up on the town website. We basically condemned the leafleting act, but we thanked those within the town, both the administration and the police, and frankly, both the Republicans and the Democrats, for their swift condemnation and the message that sent about our community. And what that left then was the question of whether there's anything more that we wanted to do. And we agreed that we would come back and discuss that at our next meeting, which then, of course, didn't happen. I did talk with, I'm not sure the title, but I think it's the Deputy Chief of Police before our last meeting. And of course, I apologize that that's now a full month ago. And so my memory of it is a little bit vague. But I wanted to report that there is a person within the police force who's been assigned to investigate this. It's not limited to the town of Trumbull. It was this leafleting act took place in adjoining towns as well. It's not clear that a crime was committed. As offensive as what was done may have been, and as unwelcome as it may be, it's not clear that it's criminal. And so the police have to do their investigation and make their determinations. And they assured me that they're doing that. With that much said, we put it on the agenda to provide the opportunity for further discussion, and I'll invite that.
If I remember correctly from the meeting that we talked about that, the question was more about follow-up, like what had happened after, after they said we're investigating. It just felt like it kind of faded off into thin air. I just didn't know if there was a reporting back that we can request, or just some resolution. What did their investigation conclude? Did they identify the parties involved? I mean, just to kind of get some more facts on the story, because it was very hot when it happened, and then it seems to have really, like a lot of things, it faded into the background.
Yeah, so I don't know what the conclusion of the investigation was, or if the investigation has concluded. I confess I haven't checked back in the last month. I suspect it's the case that the details of an ongoing investigation are not going to be shared with us, but the deputy chief was reasonably forthcoming about the fact of an investigation and that they were taking it seriously and looking into it. And I imagine that if we went back to them and asked for an update, we would receive one of some kind. And so, if the sense of the committee is that that's what we'd like to do, we'd like to inquire. That path is open to us. And if there's anything else that we want to talk with the police about, or to do, then that's up for discussion this evening.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is I think there's a danger, a risk, I'm not sure what the right word there is, in just letting it go and not following up. That feels wrong to me. So at the very least, an inquiry to express ongoing concern, and as town residents, we would like to see this. Obviously, we'd like to see this addressed. But the first question is to ask what the current status is at the moment.
Yeah, I would like to know as well. And I agree that I don't, while the specifics or kind of the details of any particular investigation, I understand we may not be privy to all of that. I would at least want to know, still investigating, investigation's finished, and if it is finished, to whatever degree it could be shared, what the findings were of that investigation. And I do think it's important that we continue to follow up until there is some sort of finality to it.
Okay.
And if I could just make the
Other
observation that
thoughts?
if I could just make the observation that when I Googled it, it brought up related articles that this happened in Glastonbury, it happened in Vernon, it happened in Durham, it happened in Middletown, it happened in Rocky Hill. It's like, this is not just a Trumbull issue. So it's clearly larger than that, but.
And it happened in Monroe at the same time, at least in Monroe.
Right.
Rodney?
Yeah, that was definitely, I did some research on that myself. It was like the lieutenant governor said there were 207 incidents of this type of propaganda throughout the state of Connecticut. I think within the year, this year. My question, I have two questions. One is, was there official statement that the lieutenant governor or the Trumbull Police Department made where I can actually read it? And my second question is, when we do the meetings, are we allowed to bring in guests or someone, not guests, but are we allowed to bring in the deputy chief of police if the schedule permits, so he can explain to us exactly where we are and how it works? It could be just 10 minutes. Or once we do something, so we're allowed to do that.
I'm not aware of what, if anything, has been released by the lieutenant governor or the governor's office. Our first selectman and chief of police released a joint statement right after the incident, and I'm sure we can track that down and share it with you. As far as inviting a representative of the police department to come to one of our meetings, we can issue the invitation. They can decline. I have no reason to think that they wouldn't come talk to us if we invited them. And if the committee would like to invite them, I'm happy to have that on our agenda for January, issue the invitation, and see what comes.
Being that that's been so widespread in the state, does anyone know whether it's been brought to the attention of the state police? They have a hate crimes division. So I'm just hearing that long list, which I was not aware of previously. I knew there were a few others. I'm curious the extent to which it's been brought to the state police.
That'd be a great question to ask.
I
Ask
don't
the
now
police.
recall what I was told. I have this sense in the back of my head that the FBI had been informed. To what extent they're involved, I don't know. But we could certainly ask our police representatives to come to a meeting and share with us what they're willing to share about the investigation. As I said, they may decline. They may say it's an ongoing investigation. We're not comfortable, and they may still be willing to tell us some information, not in one of our meetings. But I'm happy to issue the invitation if that's what folks would like to do.
I vote yes for that.
I would be fine. I mean, it would be, I'd love to just get I'd like to get a report if we can. I mean, if it takes having them appear or join us in person, that's fine, but I would hope there would be something that has been concluded and publishable that might make it so that we could get it quicker and easier.
Okay. Well, why don't I reach out to the deputy chief and let him know of the committee's interest and see if he would be interested in coming to one of our meetings, or if not, if there's some form of a report that he
Yeah.
can provide either in writing or through us.
That sounds good.
Does that make sense to everybody?
Mhm.
Great.
All right. So I'll move on to the next agenda item. I briefly alluded to this. As I said, as everyone knows, we don't have a budget, and so what we can accomplish depends on what we can do without money or through money that gets raised privately or through collaboration with others, including with town departments that do receive town money. And so I kind of kept on as an agenda item the opportunity to discuss clients that we, whether with Parks and Rec, with the First Selectman's office, or other parts of government, including, for example, the Trumbull Library, with which we've got a collaboration going. We are entering budget season, or we're in it. I'm not sure which. And if there's something that we want to do and want to have the money allocated for it into some line item of some department's budget, then the time is ripe to try to suggest that and to try to build those collaborations. And so I again invite anybody who's got a clever thought to share it. And if not, I'll hold it on the agenda one more month, after which we'll probably be outside of budget season, and we'll have we'll instead be, borrowing hat in hand or begging hat in hand for people to be willing to share their existing budgets with us if we design an event. The way these things tend to go is something will occur to us in May or July, and we'll say, oh, we'd like to do this, and we'll be in that latter position. But it's obviously better if we can anticipate it and plan for it. So I don't know if anybody has a thought now.
I don't have a particular idea at the moment, though I do think it is worth us exploring the Park and Rec, another of the town which we could partner with. But the other thing I would share that I've named previously is that I think that this work needs to be a two-way street. And so while it is helpful and important for us to consider what events we might want to do and to approach the park, can we collaborate? Then I also think it's fair for departments to be informed that our committee is willing to work with you on things, and for it to be part of their as well as they are going into their budget season.
I thank you for that reminder. We had talked about that at our meeting in October, and at that time had deliberately tabled that, recognizing that there was a little thing like an election coming up, and we weren't going to get a lot of attention to an issue like this at that time. But it might be appropriate this time to the cross collaboration or the mutual collaboration, and the suggestion to reach out to the Parks and Rec department and see if there are things they might want to do with us is also a good one. And so I guess I now, having made a little list of all the things I'm going to do, might take David's good advice to share the wealth. Are there one or two of you who together might like to reach out to Parks and Rec and talk with them about anything that they might be interested in doing with us? And are there one or two, whether the same one or two or a different one or two, who might want to take upon themselves pursuing this with the first selectman's office? And I guess that can take more than at least a couple of forms. We could just write to the first selectman's office and ask for the support, or we could write to the first selectman's office and ask for a meeting. I don't know if folks have a thought about which of those two things might be preferable, or some door number three.
How are you, sorry, how are you thinking of approaching the first selectman's office in regards to the statement? Because it seems like you
I was
could
just
do
going to
both of
send.
those.
I was just going to send a letter with the statement.
Oh,
I can imagine making the letter more encompassing, but I'm inclined to keep it a single purpose letter.
okay.
Personally, I think it might be helpful to request a meeting to engage in a discussion about cross collaboration and sort of the two-way street nature of what I hope our committee would become. So I would advocate for a meeting to discuss that with Vicky.
So maybe, well, Jim, maybe you can advise us. If we ask for a meeting with the first selectman and it's granted, and multiple members of our committee attend, what are the FOIA requirements associated with that? If that's not a meeting of our committee, does that become a public noticed event?
If you have a quorum of your committee together with the first selectman, that would be a meeting that would have to be a public meeting. I mean, I think certainly if one or two of you wanted to call the first selectman's office to schedule a meeting with the first selectman or a conference call with her, I think she'd be happy to talk with you about these issues. And that might be the most efficient way to go about it. And then you can report back to the committee as a whole.
So let's take a two-pronged approach. Let's see if we can have one or two of us interface directly with Park and Rec, and one or two of us try to set up a meeting with the first select woman herself and see if we can engage her. I don't have strong views about necessarily whether I need to participate in either one of those, but if folks think that the title requires my participation, then I'm happy to. Let's start with the one that I'm sure doesn't require the chairman to be involved. Are there one or two people who would be willing to talk to Parks and Rec about activities that we might do with them?
Is there someone who's got a previous relationship with the department?
That's just what I was going to ask.
We should leverage that first, I would think.
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I've talked to them already in connection with our efforts to get onto the arts event that was ultimately unsuccessful. I don't know if anybody else has.
I can reach out. I don't remember exactly what her title is, but she does something with events for Park and Rec, and her son is in my son's class, so I can connect with her.
Okay. Do you want to do that on your own, or would you like to have a teammate?
Yeah, I'm happy to at least initially do it on my own. That's fine. Unless somebody
Okay.
wants to be a teammate.
And then for reaching out to the first selectman's office, um, I could be persuaded either way about whether that should come from me. Does anybody else want that opportunity?
I would be happy to do it if you need. I would be happy to either do it or do it with you, if whichever we think is the better approach.
Yeah. Well, David, why don't you see if you can set up a meeting for with the first select woman and say 2 or 3 members of edit. Okay, I'm gonna ask if folks don't mind if we skip over items F, G, and H for the moment of old business, because I really would like to make sure we have time to address the new business, and in particular the second item of new business, because it's potentially time sensitive. And then if time permits, we can return to the old business. Does anybody object to doing that? Okay, so there are 2 items of new business. The report to town council I put under new business because it's our next report, even though there have been previous reports to the town council, and so this has been on our agenda in the past. The short version is that we're overdue for a report, but because of election season and other things, it hasn't happened. And so I am pursuing efforts to try to get back on the town council's agenda for whenever they can accommodate us. I don't think it will be, it will definitely not be in December. It may or may not be in January. I hopefully it won't be later than February, but I'm going to see if I can get us on their agenda, principally because we're expected to give these reports, and I want to at least have the record be clear that we've made every effort to be available to do it. If the town council isn't prepared to accept the report, then that's why they're the boss. The other item of new business is our special public meeting, and as most of you know, maybe all, we have every year held a meeting in January as a special meeting at which we have explicitly invited members of the public to come speak. And in the last year or 2, we actually had a suggested focus. We didn't say that people who are coming out could only speak on the designated topic, but we did designate a topic as a means of trying to encourage input. And actually, Rodney's wife spoke at one a couple of years ago, I think it was. Shala, before she was on the committee, spoke, I think, at that same meeting. Look what happens. You come to the meeting, you know, someone you know and love gets on the committee. Last year, as I recall, almost all of the comments focused on the goal within the Muslim American community to get the Eid holidays on the school calendar. And although I don't think that our meeting accomplished that, it did get accomplished in the wake of that. And we did provide support in the wake of those comments. And so I do think that these meetings are helpful, both to the members of the public who are able to express their views and share them with our committee, and to our committee as a means of embracing the public and learning what people are worried about. And so I can't help but notice that next month is January. And so if we're gonna do this in January again, then we need to plan it now. There's nothing that prevents us from having this special meeting in February instead. In the past, we've tried to schedule it actually before our regular January meeting. And then our regular January meeting is an opportunity to debrief and discuss it. That seems to me to be unrealistic this time round. But we could schedule it for after our January meeting and debrief in February, or we could schedule it in February and debrief in February, assuming that people agree with me that we should have the meeting. And so I'll start there and see if people think that this is something that is a condition, a tradition we want to continue. Such strong views.
Yeah.
I do believe it's a tradition we should continue, and I advocate for giving ourselves a reasonable amount of time to advertise this opportunity. I know in my past experience, having spoken previously, it was like I found out about it like fairly close to the date and sort of like haphazardly. And made the time to attend, but I would like for us to be able to, aside from the sort of typical notice that needs to be posted, to be able to message as much as possible this opportunity for people to be able to come and speak.
Okay. Do others have views on whether to continue the tradition? And do folks share the view that rather than rush to try to do this in January, we should sort of do it more deliberately, even if that means that we're a little late this year?
I think it's an important outlet. I think it's good to hear from the general public when they've got things to share. I think that's something that's certainly something we can do relatively easily, and I think continuing that annually is a good thing. I do remember we did the first one, and the turnout was actually, I thought, pretty good, and was very impressed with the feedback that we got. I know when we did the one last year, it was much shorter. There were like maybe 2 or 3 people max who spoke, and so I agree that like Chala just said, if we're going to do this, we need to make sure we are advertising it properly so that we're getting the biggest turnout we possibly can, and not making it feel like we're kind of just shoehorning it into an annual time period.
How was it advertised in the past, or how did it get out there?
There's public notice, obviously, on the town website, and I think it goes on the town calendar. We also put it on our own edit Facebook page, and then from there it got shared into various social media outlets. I think that's principally how we've done it. I don't know if anybody recalls anything more than that.
I think we should do this.
I-
We should push this to February.
Mhm.
Okay, so I mean, I think I'm hearing that I mean, there's sort of a growing consensus that we should do it. We shouldn't rush it in January. We should make
Right.
sure that it's appropriately publicized or socialized. In the past, I think we have. Well, I say it the other way. I know we have had prompts. Subject matter prompts for the discussion. Do folks think that that's a helpful thing to do, or leave it to the minds of the public?
I would be curious to ask those that have spoken at that whether the prompt was useful or not.
I think the only one here who's done that is Shala, and
Shala.
she probably spoke at a meeting where there was no prompt.
I actually think there was a prompt, and I remember it feeling like it helped to focus what I wanted to say or what I chose to say. At the same time, I wonder if a prompt might limit some people if what you wanted to come talk about perhaps does not align with the prompt. I mean, it was like sufficiently general, but I guess I just worry about any specificity crowding out people who, I don't know, might want to come and talk about something else that's not, perhaps they don't feel like fits the prompt.
But is it a prompt, or is it a suggestion, or maybe a few suggestions of what people might want to talk about, with the open opportunity to talk about other things?
I think that as we've done it, it has been a single prompt, not a, we never said this is the only subject. And to the contrary, I think we said that if people have other things on their minds, we welcome hearing it. But the messaging that went out was here, we're going to have a public meeting. Come share with us your thoughts on X.
Right.
And I think one year it was when have I felt welcomed or unwelcomed in Trumbull or something along those lines. So, we could pick a similar prompt, we could pick a different prompt, we could pick no prompt. The person who suggested I think was most constructive at suggesting prompts is no longer on our committee. Stena Quinn was pretty good at it. I'm happy to have good advice from any one of the Brady Bunch squares.
You mentioned something about the library had posters or prompts up for people to comment on. Is that something similar or the same?
Yeah, it's a similar idea. The library's prompt is what does inclusion mean to me? Something like that.
Okay.
We could pick a prompt like that and run with it. But it's up to us.
I'm veering away from the discussion of the prompt slightly, but just wanted to share that I also think it's important for us to be strategic about what we're doing with the information that we are getting in this public meeting. John, you spoke about last meeting, many of the comments being about adding holidays to the school calendar, and not that it was a direct result of that, but we were able to throw support behind that, writing a letter to the Board of Ed, et cetera. So that's to me, a concrete sort of tangible next step that was taken on the part of this committee coming out of that, or at least I assume, because I wasn't on the committee at the time. And because I was not on the committee at the time, I remember hearing a lot of comments, maybe not a lot, that may not be fair, but some comments related to things happening in the schools, sort of incidents amongst children on buses, et cetera. And so I guess I just want to make sure that if we are getting this information, that we are doing something important, useful, and meaningful.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've tried. So the first year we did it, I think there were some comments about, among other things, policing in the town of Trumbull. Rodney's wife spoke about that. And as a result, we sat down with the police chief and his deputies and had a candid conversation. And we invited them to come to one of our meetings and talk further with us. I think there may have been some comments that were made about education, and we invited the superintendent and one of his assistants to come talk with us. And so, I think we have been pretty good about following up, and that's the reason for the debrief at our next meeting, is to talk about what we've heard and consider what to do with it. And I certainly hope we'll continue in that vein. I guess what I'd like to suggest is that we, I wonder whether we shouldn't pick a date now in February, and we can start to put together some flyers and get them out on social media. If we develop a prompt at our January meeting, we can re-advertise and sort of refresh our messaging, but in the meantime, we'll have a date and people can start to plan as Shala suggested. Does that make sense? The other thing that we've debated, I'm sorry, David.
Sorry,
let me just
please
finish this
go
thought. The other thing that we debated in multiple years is the form of the event. Should we do it in public at the Trumbull Library? Should we do it by Zoom? And every year we've done it by Zoom. I think recognizing pros and cons, but that the Zoom platform, first of all, it means that you don't have to cancel because of some pandemic. But second of all, it means that people can attend from wherever they are, and dinner doesn't interfere quite as much, and people can find a way to join us. I'm inclined to do it again by Zoom, but I'm happy to open that up for discussion too, if we wanted to try to do it in person. David, what were you going to say?
Sorry, to that point specifically, I think that the Zoom platform allows people to join a little more easily. And so I'm hoping on the pros and cons side, I'm all about seeing people in person, but I think in this particular case that public feedback session may in fact be better on Zoom, because I think it's easier to join, and hopefully that would increase the number of people who would come and talk to us. Related to that, in regards to getting the most amount of people to attend, I don't know that. I'm not trying to suggest we delay this, but it would be great if we, like, for instance, had the next book club event at the library and use that as a way to talk about the next thing, which could be the public feedback. I feel like we haven't been doing this long enough to get into a cycle where we're ready to talk about we're 2 or 3 events ahead, and we can use the current event that we've got with people in the room to say, and the next thing we're doing is XYZ. I just don't think the timing will work out now, but I hope that would be a goal for later on, that we're in some kind of cycle that allows us to talk about the next 1 or 2 events at whatever event we're hosting at that or involved with at that moment.
We could talk about the upcoming book club at the special
Could do it
meeting.
that way. That's true. You could do it that way. Except it'd be harder to quickly read a book than it would be.
Other thoughts, comments? People have a view on in-person versus Zoom? Thoughts on scheduling a meeting for presumably a Thursday in February?
Not on this committee as a participant, but I think you should know, I'm planning a gala for the Y in February, and both Vicky and the chief of police will be in attendance on February 8th. It's a Thursday. So you may want to eliminate that date if you want them to be present, or or whatever. just suggesting.
I don't anticipate that they'll come to this meeting, but I also don't want to compete with you. So I think that our edit meeting in February is probably February 15th. That's the 3rd Thursday of the month. Am I right about that?
Mhm. Sounds right.
So ordinarily the 8th would have looked very attractive, but February 1st is probably possible.
Would you want to consider a hybrid, have a meeting in person, but you could also join and participate by Zoom? I don't know.
I would love to consider it. My understanding is that it's a technical impossibility.
Oh, we did it in schools for months.
Right.
We got really good at it. But it's not, I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm just throwing that out as a thought.
We've explored in the past. The library has told us, or whoever it is has told us, that you can't have a
They can't.
program in the library that gets broadcast.
That's weird.
What do folks think about February 1st?
That still only leaves us with 1 regular monthly meeting before that event. Right.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be
It
on us
does.
pretty fast.
Just to me,
On the other hand, it gives us more than 1 full month to get the word out. And if we want to recalibrate a little bit on January 18th, we have 2 full weeks to refresh the message.
Yeah.
That seems to me to be reasonable.
Yeah, I guess it's doable.
All right. I'm not hearing dissent. I'm seeing some nods. So maybe I'll call for a motion to have a special meeting open to the public for purposes of public comment. Oh, speaking of which, I never called for public comment at this meeting. gosh, I'll do that and then we can adjourn. Um, uh, on February 1st. Is there a motion?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Rodney's in favor. Okay. Um, I think what I'd like to do is leave items 8G and H to our January meeting. And unless there's objection, I'll leave item 8F as well. But let me go back with apologies to Roman numeral 6 and ask Bill if there are any members of the public hanging in with us, let's ask if they want to say anything.
I'm sorry, Jonathan. I don't mean to drag us backwards, but that February 1st date time for that same time, 7:30 normal time.
I don't know if folks have a view about 7 p.m. versus 7:30. I guess 7:30 makes sense to me. 7:30 it is.
Great, thank you.
Bill, is nobody in the public?
There's nobody in attendance currently.
All right. So maybe it's a harmless foul. Does anybody object to tabling items 8, F, G, and H to our January meeting? Okay, so I think that means that we can move on to Roman numeral 10, and I'll call for a motion to adjourn. Anyone want to make it?
I move to adjourn.
Okay, is there a
Second.
second? Okay, that one gets no discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so Bill, you want to take us down?